The air aboard the transport ship crackled with anticipation, a silent tension that belied the calm waters of the Pacific. Here, in the sweltering hold, men gathered for a briefing unlike any other in World War II, preparing for a historic landing that would resonate far beyond its immediate strategic importance. This wasn't merely another assault on a Japanese base. It was a deeply symbolic return, captured in a stark black-and-white photograph that speaks volumes. For these Marines, stepping onto enemy soil wasn't just about victory. It was about reclaiming a legacy, about writing the next chapter in a story of fierce loyalty and unrelenting spirit in the Far East. Presiding over this pivotal moment was Lieutenant Colonel Fred D. Beans, a distinguished officer from Annapolis, Maryland. As commander of the 4th Marine Regiment, Beans carried the weight of an extraordinary lineage on his shoulders. This was no ordinary regiment. The new 4th Marines, reactivated on February 1, 1944, was forged from the crucible of combat, comprising battle-hardened Marine Raider battalions. These were the elite, the spearhead of island-hopping campaigns, men who had seen plenty of action in the Solomon Islands, Emirau, Guam, and Okinawa. Their very existence, however, was a testament to an even deeper history. They bore the illustrious name of the old 4th Marines, a regiment whose legacy stretched back to 1927 when they first deployed to China. For years, the original 4th had served as sentinels in the Far East, a steadfast American presence in a volatile region, until the looming specter of war brought them to the Philippines. There, they fought with legendary courage until the bitter end, surrendering on Corregidor. Now, the new 4th, embodying the spirit and ferocity of their predecessors, stood poised to return to the Orient, to bring the name of the 4th Marines back to the region where its saga began. It was a fusion of two powerful legacies, the disciplined service of the old and the audacious spirit of the Raiders, all culminating in this single, historic mission. The old 4th Marines first arrived in Shanghai in 1927, part of the larger U.S. Marine Corps contingent sent to protect American interests and nationals amidst the escalating Chinese Civil War. These were not combat deployments in the traditional sense, but rather a complex mission of diplomacy backed by force. For over a decade, the 4th Marines became an enduring fixture in the international settlement of Shanghai. Their presence was both a shield and a symbol. They patrolled the city's bustling streets, a visible deterrent to potential threats, and guarded key installations and concession areas. Life for these Marines was a unique blend of military discipline and cultural immersion. They maintained rigorous training schedules, parades, and drills, showcasing American military prowess, but also engaged with the diverse international community and the local Chinese population. This sustained deployment fostered a distinct regimental identity, one forged not just in battle, but in the long, often tense, watch over a city teetering on the brink of wider conflict. As Japan's imperial ambitions grew, particularly after the Mukden incident in 1931 and the subsequent invasion of Manchuria, the 4th Marines found themselves increasingly in a precarious geopolitical position. They were witnesses to the deepening crisis in Asia, their patrols now taking on an added layer of vigilance as the Sino-Japanese War erupted in earnest in 1937. The sound of distant gunfire, the sight of refugees, and the constant threat of escalating hostilities became part of their daily reality. Despite the proximity to conflict, their mission remained one of neutrality and protection, a delicate balance maintained for years. Their role as sentinels in China, though often overlooked in the grander narrative of World War II, was crucial. They represented American commitment in the Far East, a steadfast force in a region undergoing profound and violent transformation. They were the visible embodiment of American policy, a regiment that had served for 13 years in a foreign land, gaining invaluable experience in complex international environments. This long, arduous tenure in China established the initial, enduring legacy of the 4th Marine Regiment, a legacy of unwavering duty and presence that would soon be tested in the ultimate crucible of global war. But as the shadow of war spread across the Pacific, even their unwavering presence in Shanghai could not hold back the tide. In November 1941, with tensions reaching a fever pitch, the 4th Marines were ordered to the Philippines. This was no ordinary redeployment. It was a strategic withdrawal designed to consolidate American forces in the region, an implicit recognition of the impending storm. The move was bittersweet for many. They left behind years of service, friendships, and a unique rhythm of life in a foreign city. But they carried with them the disciplined resilience forged over more than a decade in China. Upon arriving in the Philippines, the 4th Marines were integrated into the broader American defense strategy, primarily tasked with defending the heavily fortified islands guarding Manila Bay, Corregidor, Fort Drum, Fort Frank, and Fort Hughes. Corregidor, the largest and most strategically vital, became their primary focus. Known as the Rock, it was a labyrinth of tunnels, artillery batteries, and fortifications intended to be an impregnable bastion. The Marines, accustomed to the urban patrols of Shanghai, now found themselves preparing for siege warfare, digging in, and manning heavy coastal guns. On December 8, 1941, mere hours after the attack on Pearl Harbor, Japanese forces struck the Philippines. The 4th Marines found themselves immediately thrust into the brutal reality of total war. Their initial role was to provide perimeter defense and anti-aircraft support as Japanese bombers systematically pounded the airfields and naval bases. But as the main American and Filipino forces on the Bataan Peninsula were pushed back, the 4th Marines on Corregidor braced for the inevitable. The siege of Corregidor was relentless. Day after day, Japanese artillery and bombers hammered the island, turning its once formidable defenses into rubble. The Marines, alongside their Army and Filipino counterparts, endured constant barrages, dwindling rations, and the ever-present threat of disease. They fought with a tenacity born of desperation, repelling probing attacks and maintaining the defensive lines despite overwhelming odds. Their spirit, honed through years of disciplined service, proved unyielding even in the face of such devastation. As the situation on Bataan became untenable, General Douglas MacArthur, then commander of U.S. Army forces in the Far East, ordered his forces to withdraw to Corregidor, swelling the ranks on the tiny island and further straining its limited resources. The 4th Marines became a critical component of the island's final defense, manning machine gun nests, mortar positions, and providing crucial infantry support wherever needed. They engaged in fierce skirmishes, often hand-to-hand, against Japanese infiltrators who attempted to land on the island's rocky shores. By late April 1942, the fall of Bataan was complete, and Corregidor stood alone, a final defiant outpost in the Philippines. The Japanese intensified their assault, launching a full-scale amphibious landing on the island's eastern side on May 5th. The 4th Marines, depleted and exhausted, met the invaders with a ferocious defense. Every inch of ground was contested. They fought from their positions in Malin to Tunnel, from shattered gun emplacements, and amidst the rubble of barracks. The combat was brutal, often fought at close quarters in the darkness of the tunnels and the smoke of exploding shells. Despite their heroic resistance, the sheer weight of Japanese numbers and firepower proved insurmountable. On May 6, 1942, after nearly 5 months of relentless fighting, the order to surrender was given. For the 4th Marine Regiment, a unit with a proud and continuous history stretching back to 1911 and its long tenure in China, this was a devastating moment. Those who survived became prisoners of war, facing years of brutal captivity. The surrender of Corregidor marked the tragic end of the old 4th Marines, a chapter of valor and sacrifice that would forever be etched into the annals of Marine Corps history. Their legacy, though born of defeat, was one of unwavering courage and extraordinary endurance in the face of overwhelming adversity. But even as the Old 4th fought its desperate final battle in the Philippines, a new breed of Marine was already being forged. The early days of World War II in the Pacific had proven the need for highly specialized units capable of swift, amphibious raids and unconventional warfare. Traditional infantry, while vital, lacked the agility and stealth required for hit-and-run tactics against entrenched enemy positions. Out of this strategic necessity, the Marine Raider battalions were born in early 1942. These were not just new units, they represented a fundamental shift in Marine Corps doctrine. Inspired in part by British commandos, the Raiders were envisioned as an elite shock force, trained to operate deep behind enemy lines, conduct reconnaissance, and seize critical objectives with speed and surprise. Recruits for the Raider battalions were hand-picked, often volunteers, selected for their physical prowess, mental fortitude, and adaptability. They underwent an accelerated, grueling training regimen that pushed them far beyond the conventional limits of Marine boot camp. Their training focused on unconventional tactics, close-quarters combat, knife fighting, demolitions, silent movement through dense jungle, and expert marksmanship. They learned to navigate by stars and compass, to survive on minimal rations, and to execute lightning-fast assaults from Higgins boats and rubber rafts. Emphasis was placed on independent decision-making and aggressive initiative, fostering a culture of self-reliance and audacious action. The Raiders were equipped differently too. Lighter, more agile weapons were favored, and they were among the first to widely employ the M1 carbine and various types of submachine guns, alongside their iconic Ka-Bar combat knives. Their distinct green camouflage utilities and jungle boots quickly became a symbol of their unique status. Their baptism by fire came swiftly in the Solomon Islands campaign, a brutal, protracted struggle for control of vital islands like Chalagi and Guadalcanal. The 1st Marine Raider Battalion, under Lieutenant Colonel Merritt A. Edson, Red Mike, famously conducted the first major offensive ground combat for the United States in World War II, with their August 1942 landing on Chalagi. There, they faced fierce Japanese resistance, enduring hand-to-hand combat and heavy casualties, but ultimately securing the island. The 2nd Marine Raider Battalion, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Evans F. Carlson, executed a daring and arduous 30-day long patrol on Guadalcanal later that year. This deep penetration behind enemy lines, covering hundreds of miles of treacherous jungle, demonstrated the Raiders' incredible endurance, their ability to gather intelligence, and their effectiveness in disrupting Japanese supply lines and communications. They engaged in numerous skirmishes, ambushing enemy patrols and destroying vital equipment, proving the viability of their unconventional tactics in the unforgiving Pacific theater. Throughout the Solomon Islands, the Raiders distinguished themselves in countless engagements. They were at the forefront of the island-hopping campaign, spearheading landings, conducting raids on Japanese strongholds, and often operating independently for extended periods. Their reputation grew with each harrowing mission, a reputation for ferocity, stealth, and an almost superhuman resilience. They were the tip of the spear, the shock troops who paved the way for larger formations. Yet despite their successes, the Raiders were a relatively small force, and their specialized nature, while effective, sometimes proved difficult to integrate seamlessly into larger regimental operations. As the war progressed and the scale of amphibious assaults grew, the Marine Corps began to reevaluate the role of these elite units. The experience gained by the Raiders, however, would prove invaluable, and the lessons learned in the jungles of the Solomons would soon be applied to a grander strategic vision. The bravery and skill of these pioneering commandos would not be lost, but rather repurposed for an even greater challenge. Do you think the creation of the Raiders was a necessary evolution in warfare or a temporary experiment? Tell me in the comments. By early 1944, the relentless island-hopping campaign demanded a flexible, yet robust fighting force. The Marine Corps, looking to maximize its combat effectiveness and streamline its organizational structure, made a pivotal decision. On February 1, 1944, a storied name from the past was resurrected, the 4th Marine Regiment. But this would be no mere reactivation. It was a strategic reimagining, a fusion of legacy and innovation. The new 4th Marines would not be built from fresh recruits. Instead, it was forged from the very battalions that had proven their mettle in the crucible of the Solomon Islands, the Marine Raiders. These battle-hardened veterans, with their unmatched combat experience and hard-won expertise in amphibious assault and jungle warfare, formed the core of the Reactivated Regiment. The 1st and 4th Raider Battalions were consolidated and redesignated as the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 4th Marines, while the 2nd and 3rd Raider Battalions were similarly reformed into the 3rd Battalion, 4th Marines. This integration was more than just a change of designation. It was a strategic move to imbue a legendary regiment with the tactical prowess and aggressive spirit of its most elite units. The decision reflected a broader understanding within the Marine Corps that while specialized raider tactics were formidable, the demands of large-scale island assaults required the sustained firepower and logistical support of a conventional infantry regiment. By folding the Raiders into the 4th Marines, the Corps aimed to create a versatile force capable of both specialized infiltration and sustained frontline combat. The Raiders brought with them a culture of self-reliance, innovative tactics, and an unwavering commitment to mission accomplishment, honed in brutal campaigns from Chalagi to New Georgia. This wasn't just about adding numbers. It was about injecting a unique combat philosophy directly into the heart of a reactivated regiment. The new 4th Marines would carry the weight of a proud heritage, now revitalized with the cutting edge of Marine combat doctrine. The new 4th Marines, reborn from the crucible of Raider battalions, now prepared to face an enemy whose resolve, though battered, remained a potent force. For years, the Imperial Japanese Navy and Army had fought with a ferocity few Allied forces had ever encountered. From the jungles of Guadalcanal to the caves of Okinawa, their resistance had been legendary, their willingness to die for the Emperor Absolute. At Yokosuka, the Japanese naval base, guarding the entrance to Tokyo Bay, the Marines anticipated encountering what remained of these formidable forces. While the Imperial Japanese Navy had suffered catastrophic losses throughout the war, leaving its once mighty fleet crippled, ground defenses were expected to be robust. These were the home islands, and every inch of soil was considered sacred. Commanders understood that even a severely diminished enemy fighting on its own turf could inflict heavy casualties. Intelligence reports indicated a mix of Imperial Navy personnel, repurposed for ground defense, alongside elements of the Imperial Japanese Army. Their primary objective, even at this late stage of the war, was clear: to defend the homeland against Allied invasion at all costs. The Marines knew this enemy well. Their disciplined training, their often fanatical devotion, and their entrenched defensive tactics had been encountered on countless Pacific islands. While their air power was shattered and naval support minimal, the defenders of Yokosuka were expected to have fortified positions, hidden artillery, and a deeply ingrained readiness for suicidal counterattacks. This was not just a landing. It was a return to the heart of the enemy's power, and the new 4th Marines were under no illusions about the nature of the fight, even in victory's shadow. With the new 4th Marines reactivated in early 1944, the former Raider battalions, now unified under the regimental banner, were quickly thrust back into the crucible of island warfare. Their first major test as a cohesive regiment came with the invasion of Emirau in March 1944. Tasked with seizing this remote island, the 4th Marines executed a largely unopposed landing. While the lack of immediate enemy resistance might have seemed a reprieve, the operation was a crucial exercise in coordinated regimental movement, logistics, and base construction in a hostile environment. They secured the island, transforming it into a vital airbase, demonstrating their rapid deployment capabilities and the disciplined execution of their mission. Emirau, though lacking the brutal combat of later campaigns, solidified the integration of the Raider battalions into a conventional regimental structure, refining their command and control under fire, or rather, under the watchful eye of their new command. The lessons learned at Emirau were swiftly applied to a far more formidable challenge: Guam. In July 1944, the 4th Marines landed on Guam as part of the 3rd Amphibious Corps, facing a deeply entrenched and determined Japanese defense. The fighting was ferocious and protracted. The Marines encountered a complex network of caves, bunkers, and interlocking fields of fire, meticulously prepared over years. The rugged terrain, dense jungle, and oppressive heat added to the ordeal, The 4th Marines, deploying their hard-won raider experience in jungle combat and small unit tactics, were central to breaking the Japanese resistance. They spearheaded assaults against heavily fortified positions, often engaging in close-quarters combat to clear caves and pillboxes. Their actions on Guam were a testament to their adaptability and tenacity, showcasing how the specialized skills of the raiders could be effectively scaled up within a regimental framework. From the initial beachheads to the final mop-up operations, the new 4th Marines proved their mettle, reclaiming an American territory at a significant cost and further cementing their reputation as a formidable fighting force in the Pacific theater. After the grinding victory on Guam, the 4th Marines faced their ultimate test, Okinawa. This was no mere island in the Solomons, nor a recaptured American territory. This was Japan's doorstep, and the defense was unlike anything the Pacific had yet witnessed. Landing on April 1, 1945, the 4th, now part of the 6th Marine Division, was thrown into a meat grinder designed to bleed American forces white. The Japanese High Command, understanding the strategic importance of Okinawa, had deployed a massive, deeply entrenched force. General Ushijima Mitsuru, commanding the 32nd Army, had abandoned traditional beach defenses, choosing instead to conduct a prolonged attritional battle from a formidable defensive line across the southern half of the island. This Shuri line, named for the ancient capital, was a masterpiece of military engineering. Miles of interconnected tunnels, caves, concrete pillboxes, and artillery positions, all expertly camouflaged and mutually supporting. Every ridge, every valley, every hillside was a potential stronghold. The 4th Marines, seasoned by Emirau and Guam, were at the forefront of the brutal advance. Their initial objectives often involved clearing the northern part of the island, where terrain was no less unforgiving, characterized by jagged coral ridges and thick vegetation. The fight quickly devolved into a series of excruciating uphill battles against determined, often suicidal, resistance. Companies would spend days, sometimes weeks, fighting for a single hill, only to find another equally fortified one beyond it. They engaged in relentless close-quarters combat, often employing flamethrowers and satchel charges to root out fanatical defenders from their subterranean lairs. The raider battalions, now fully integrated into the regiment, brought their specialized skills to bear. Their experience in jungle warfare and small unit infiltration, honed in the Solomons, proved invaluable in navigating the labyrinthine Japanese defenses. Yet, even for these elite Marines, Okinawa was a new kind of hell. The relentless shelling from concealed artillery, the constant threat of sniper fire, and the pervasive stench of death became the daily reality. Casualties mounted at an alarming rate. Replacements, often fresh from boot camp, were thrown into the inferno, learning the harsh realities of war under intense fire. The mental and physical toll was immense, yet the 4th Marines pressed on, their regimental identity forged anew in the crucible of this island. They participated in critical actions, securing key positions like the formidable Kakazu Ridge and the infamous Sugarloaf Hill, objectives that demanded every ounce of their courage and tenacity. Their sacrifice, along with that of countless others, slowly but surely broke the back of the Japanese defense, clearing the path to victory, but at a terrible price. What does the name Okinawa evoke for you when you think of World War II? Tell me in the comments. But even as the last pockets of resistance were being extinguished on Okinawa, a new, unprecedented mission loomed on the horizon: the invasion of Japan itself. For months, the specter of Operation Downfall, the massive Allied plan to land on the Japanese home islands, had cast a long shadow over every battlefield. The anticipated ferocity of the Japanese defense, the willingness of every citizen to fight to the death, promised a cataclysm of unimaginable scale. Then on August 6, 1945, a blinding flash over Hiroshima changed everything. 3 days later, Nagasaki suffered the same fate. The atomic age had dawned, and with it, the swift, shocking end to a war that had consumed the globe. Japan surrendered. The invasion plans were scrapped, but for the 4th Marines, the journey to Japan was far from over. Their final mission would not be one of bloody conquest, but of occupation. They were to be among the first American forces to set foot on Japanese soil, not as invaders battling for every inch, but as occupiers securing the surrender and beginning the long, complex process of rebuilding a shattered nation. This was a moment of profound historical significance, a testament to the sacrifices made and the victory won. The anticipation aboard the transports was palpable. A different kind of tension now filled the air, not the dread of combat, but the weight of history, the enormity of being present at the dawn of a new era. They carried with them the legacy of their predecessors, those who had fought and fallen, and now they were poised to close the final chapter of the deadliest war in human history. Aboard their transport, the leathernecks of the 4th Marine Regiment gathered. The details they had long awaited were finally delivered. Lieutenant Colonel Fred D. Beans, a seasoned officer from Annapolis, Maryland, stood before his men. His words were not a call to arms for an imminent invasion, but a meticulous outline for their landing at Yokosuka, the critical Japanese naval base situated at the entrance to Tokyo Bay. This was no ordinary briefing. It was the blueprint for an unprecedented moment in military history. Beans meticulously detailed the specific procedures, the designated landing zones, the order of disembarkation, and the initial security perimeters. Every aspect of their arrival, from the disposition of Japanese forces at the base to the civilian population, was covered with precise instructions. The stakes were immense. This was a nation that had fought to the bitter end, and while the surrender was official, the potential for isolated resistance, for miscalculation, remained a stark reality. The Marines listened intently, absorbing every word. Their faces, hardened by years of island hopping from the Solomon Islands to Okinawa, now reflected a mixture of relief, solemnity, and a quiet pride. They had trained for years to invade Japan, to face an enemy entrenched on their home soil. Now that mission had transformed. Their valor had contributed to a victory that made this peaceful landing possible. They were not just soldiers, but agents of a monumental shift, marking the end of one epoch and the beginning of another. The methodical nature of Beans' briefing underscored the gravity of their task, to execute a flawless, peaceful occupation, setting a precedent for the monumental undertaking of rebuilding a shattered Japan. This was the culmination of countless battles, endless sacrifices, and unwavering resolve. Imagine being in that briefing, knowing you were about to be one of the very first to step onto enemy soil after years of brutal war. What do you think was going through the minds of those Marines? Tell me in the comments. The ramps dropped, and the 4th Marine Regiment, the new 4th, strode onto Japanese soil at Yokosuka. This was not the landing they had trained for, not the bloody invasion of the home islands they had braced themselves to execute. Instead, it was an entry into a defeated nation, a land humbled by the cataclysm of war, its people emerging from the shadows of conflict. Yet for these Marines, the significance was profound, steeped in the very history of their regiment. They were bringing the name of the 4th Marines back to the Orient, a name woven into the fabric of the region's recent past. The old 4th, those storied leathernecks, had served in China from 1927, a long vigil in a land of simmering tensions and profound change. They had been the guardians of American interests, a visible force amidst the chaos of pre-war Shanghai, their reputation forged in diplomatic missions and humanitarian aid as much as in military presence. Their memory of service and then sacrifice in the Philippines lingered like a ghost in the collective consciousness of the Corps. Now the new 4th, born from the elite Raider battalions, reactivated on February 1, 1944, returned. They were the inheritors of that legacy, carrying forward a regimental lineage that had witnessed the dramatic shifts in the Far East. Their landing at Yokosuka, a crucial Japanese naval base at the entrance to Tokyo Bay, wasn't just a military maneuver, it was a symbolic homecoming. They were planting their guidons once more in Asian soil, not as occupiers of a contested land, but as the vanguard of a new order, an honor guard for the peace that had finally arrived. This return was a powerful testament to continuity and resilience. The 4th Marines had come full circle, their journey mirroring the arc of American involvement in the Pacific. From the pre-war presence in China, through the brutal fight for Corregidor, to the island-hopping campaigns that brought them to Japan's doorstep, the regiment's story was inextricably linked to the region. Their presence at Yokosuka solidified this connection, a living bridge between the old and the new, bridging a saga of service, sacrifice, and ultimate triumph. It was a reclaiming of their heritage, a proud reassertion of their place in the annals of Marine Corps history, marking the end of one war and the beginning of a new chapter for both their regiment and the world. And yet, the legacy of the 4th Marines extended beyond this historic landing, reaching far deeper into the very fabric of the war. For this unique regiment, in its dual incarnations, holds a singular, almost poetic distinction. The old 4th Marines, those China Marines who stood guard in Shanghai and later fought so valiantly in the Philippines, bore witness to the very dawn of the conflict. Their desperate struggle on Corregidor, a stark symbol of American resistance in the face of overwhelming odds, placed them directly in the path of the war's initial, devastating thrust. It was there, amidst the siege, the relentless bombardments, and the final, heart-wrenching surrender, that they fired some of the first American shots of the Pacific War. Their tenacity, though ultimately overcome, bought precious time and forged a legend of courage against impossible odds. Then came the new 4th Marines, forged from the indomitable spirit of the Raider battalions. Their journey through the Solomons, Emirau, Guam, and Okinawa was a relentless march towards victory, a testament to renewed American might. And now, at Yokosuka, as the first American troops to set foot on mainland Japan, they stood at the threshold of peace. In this moment of profound historical significance, it was they who had the honor of firing some of the last shots of the war. Not in anger or defiance, but perhaps as a final, decisive act of deterrence, securing the surrender, ensuring the peace. This extraordinary bookending of the war, the old 4th Marines firing the first shots, and the new 4th Marines firing the last, imbues the regiment with an unparalleled distinction. It is a testament to their enduring spirit, their adaptability, and their unwavering commitment to duty. Their story encapsulates the entire arc of the conflict, from its brutal beginnings to its hard-won conclusion. The legacy of the 4th Marines, both old and new, is one of profound honor. It is a narrative woven with threads of tenacity in defeat and triumph in victory. From the beleaguered defenses of Corregidor to the triumphant landing at Yokosuka, the regiment's journey embodies the profound sacrifices and ultimate resolve of a nation at war. They were more than just soldiers. They were custodians of a legacy, guardians of a spirit that transcended individual battles, securing their place forever in the annals of history, a symbol of American resilience and determination. Legacy.